Aquarian Music Witch, the podcast.
Well, thank you for talking to me on this, the final day of the godforsaken year of 2023. And I feel that this is such a full circle moment because you are one of my closest friends since, when was it? Middle school, right? High school.
Seventh grade.
Amazing. I think the reason I first heard of you was that you were in the back of the choir class cursing your head off. And that was very funny to some of us. And ever since then, I think we've been friends of some kind, and we've seen each other like, I don't know if it's been every year or maybe like every other year, but I think we've done actually, I'm pretty proud of myself for maintaining adult friendships and actually seeing you like mostly every year, I think. Does that sound right? I think so.
Just about. Yeah, we've stayed connected throughout the years. And I remember when we first met, like officially, I just remember sitting down at the lunch table that you were sitting at, that we had mutual friends, and just like thought that you were interesting, and just was like, who's this creature? And just was like, I distinctly remember your hands were folded together and your thumbs were circling around each other, and you were like, hello. And we just began conversing. It was, well, no, just like recognizing each other, I guess, that we were meant to connect.
And then
And we,
sorry, go ahead.
oh, yeah, well, no, I don't know. We just ended up staying connected. I don't think I had talked to anyone who I even went to high school with. I think that you're my longest lasting friend at this point. It's
I
cool.
know. I think I would say the same thing, but I'm laughing because that seems like a very idealized version of me. Because what I would remember is smacking you for cursing. Because at the time I was like very in the Christian church and I thought I was like super principled about not cursing or something. And so I would like hit you, which was really violent and horrible of me. So
And
I'm
for
very blessed that you stayed my friend after that behavior.
and for some reason I don't remember that.
I'm
Like,
glad because it was too traumatizing.
and we've talked about that. Like, I don't remember that happening at all,
Oh my
but
gosh.
maybe my highest self was just like, we'll make it through this part. Like,
Just we'll get there.
well,
Well, I think we were all deeply traumatized when it came to the place that we grew up. I'm pretty sure everybody I knew had some kind of a serious mental issue, and I think it was the place. So we might
I
have just all been.
seriously think there was something in the water, and it was almost like it was electrical. I feel like there was a strange like frequency being emitted, in the air, and
Absolutely.
it
Well,
wasn't okay.
it wasn't okay. We were in a place, I guess you'd call it Sterling, right? Or like I guess Loudoun County overall. But
Sterling was the technical address where I lived.
yeah, when I was growing up, the first house I lived in was a townhouse. I don't think you ever went there. 2000, we moved into the other house that I lived in over there. Um, and I think that was Cascades, technically, that second place, but the first place was Sterling. So that's kind of what I think of. But that whole area was like outside of DC. And we've also talked about this before that I think it was like a hellmouth or some kind of a weird portal. And I have all these ideas about the architecture too, or like the sacred geometry of how they designed that city. They pretty clearly wanted to make it like a talisman to draw certain things to happen in certain Christian nationalist ways. But I think the effect energetically of the area was just like disgusting. And so we just happened to be these casualties of like children growing up in this town, which was so political, but everyone just hated themselves. Everyone was in competition. Everybody was like nihilistic. I don't know. And there was no hope. There was nothing like beautiful about it. Was I just biased? That's how I felt about that whole area.
No, mental illness was on the forefront there. I mean, so unwell. Like, like people to, it's like a weird loop to get here to my point with this, but people are so afraid of the end of the world right now,
Mhm.
and it's like people are afraid of what's going to happen next. Is it going to be like, food scarcity or water or, in Sterling though, in that area, I swear to God, if they took away the pills for one day, if
Hmm.
the pharmaceutical industry tanked, like, and there were just no pills available, I mean, those people have controlled mania over there, and
Hmm.
they're all heavily, heavily, heavily medicated. And if you just took away the pills for a day, there would be mushroom clouds and fires. Like, it would just be like sheer chaos
Well,
in
it is
that
like
area. Like, it's so controlled right
very
now in a
controlled.
weird way. Um, but that's like the medicated version. Can you imagine?
No, I
But
agree with
anyway,
you. Because it's like people that are almost like deluding themselves, or they're living in this weird world where like everything really is, I don't even know what to say, like the worst all the time. And then you just kind of have to numb yourself and get through it and just not even think about it. Like, I think that's a big reason why I even was involved in the church at that time. There was one big church that was growing the whole time I was growing up that I
mm.
don't even know if you ever came, and we probably tried to like proselytize to you at some point because there was that whole like youth service I was in forever. But it was like the only thing to do. Like they had like fun events and they would do like I remember they one time they rented a fire truck and they hosed us all with foam spray, like which sounds really weird and sexual actually now I'm saying it, but these are all like youth pastors who have no actual responsibility with kids. But it was like the only thing to do in that entire town except for I guess drugs or kill yourself. Like am I exaggerating? What else would you do?
So I love you. So you're not the only powerful witch who has spoken to DC the way so I've had a mentor, and my first yoga teacher and astrology mentor
Hmm.
described DC the same way that you did, with it being like some type of weird grid with
Yeah,
energetic channels that were like had like malice intention behind them, and that it did create like the worst energy, like, like a hellmouth, the way that you
that's what I think of.
described it. Like, she described it as like a strange portal to hell, essentially, and that it's a spell, that it's a bad spell, and we were on the outskirt of it. And I just remember it being like, no, I'm with you 100%. It stirred up everyone's neuroses. There was something about that area that was just not right. And yeah, I just feel like we were involved in some like dark agenda experiment. Um, we were the casualties, absolutely. I think we turned out okay, but don't fuck with us,
I think we
like we
did
came from,
great.
yeah, we turned out pretty
Survived,
good.
first of all. I mean, first of all, you and I are both gay of some kind, and we survived. What the hell? How do we even do that? And then we, not only that, but I think I would say we thrived. And like so much of what I respect, even about your world, is kind of like the Kundalini and astrology kind of places. And that you were almost like one of my first forays into those areas just because of telling me about them. But I'm so thankful. I think about this sometimes. Like, I'm so thankful that you found all of that because I think you survived for it because I think we started off in some very dark places, you and I, and like not exactly the same place, but dark, like people wouldn't believe. And I think we both kind of had to do some pretty drastic things to rise out of that and to embody who we're supposed to be. And we're also both Aquariuses. And so I think you, like me, just feel like, have always felt like, first of all, we have to grow into ourselves, but like we're here to do something big, 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 and shift big things. And just for us to make it to this point and to be doing that, which I think we both really are, is astounding to me. I would say kudos.
So thank you. And yeah, thanks for recognizing. I recognize you as well, fully and deeply. I do want to touch on that too, because I like this subject. Um, but yeah, it's like there's that part of me growing up there that feels like that felt like I was yearning something, that something wasn't right, and that I always knew, even when I was like little, that you know higher knowledge existed, that magic was entirely possible and real to access, but the place had a zipper up on it, like where we grew up. It was like, not going to be unveiled there,
That's
or
very
revealed
cool.
rather. And it was depressing for me. And I always felt it like to the core, but I didn't know what it was. I didn't understand anything about what that could have meant at the time. But then I moved to Richmond first, but then I moved to Asheville.
Yeah. And
And
you said that, and there was a lot of pain there too. You were like attracted to another city that was just kind of like, I've been there a couple times. I visited you there once, and it was almost like, I guess you've described it as like wounded healers or like, but it's almost like
yeah,
some of broken
you
energy.
know the chart of Asheville has a Mars Chiron conjunction in it, which would be like wounded healers. It's a town for healing, but trauma and healing go hand in hand. So it attracts a lot of traumatized people,
That makes sense.
right? And so
I
I was
totally get
very
that.
traumatized,
Yeah.
but it also showed me like it unzipped the thing and it showed me, the thing I've been craving forever, like access to the higher knowledge and to the mysticism that I always knew existed in my bones, but where we grew up, just it wasn't there. And even though I'm a firm believer it's all within, you know,
Yeah, but the
like
space was like
cells.
squelching it out of all of us. I knew too, like I've been thinking about this. I had this aunt who recently passed, which is in a way a relief because she had been dealing with some mind troubles, but leading up to that. But when I was younger, I mean, she was a witch, and we would go over and visit my grandma in Pennsylvania, and she would teach me Reiki. She would teach me energy work. She would work with me on stuff that it was like I knew magic was a thing my whole life. I knew that. But I didn't know that because of where I lived. It was like we all had this like cloud over our eyes, and I just didn't, and then I had to take many years to kind of like reconnect that part of myself back to myself because there was something that really artificially separated it or something when I was there. I really think, and it might be like that's the way you're talking about, like a spell feels right to me. It's like I forgot almost, even though I knew, you know?
It's 100%. And we get all these little slivers of hints to that in these cool movies that come out here and there, like things like, I don't know, like The Dark Crystal is like a great example, like where it's like, that's actually like totally it, you know what I mean? There's like a darkness and people like tainting the like, magic with their vile like sort of intention and keeping the ones who really are so powerful like in a fixed state where it's hard to wiggle out of it and it leaks out and it's a battle, it's a freaking war is what it is.
Yeah.
And so like, but in that place is a prime example, but in other places like, also acknowledging that it's a little bit of a bubble too, like in places like Asheville or whatever, like it's like a bit of a bubble, but at the same time it's both real and fake, right? Yeah, it's both real and fake. I've changed so much, and I'm really grateful to just be out of that and to have seen like and lived through the experience of growing up in that area too, even though like it's like no one did anything wrong. Like, my parents didn't do anything wrong, like raising us there. Like, I think a lot of people just didn't feel it or see it or weren't sensitive enough to it, or
Yeah.
I
I
don't
mean, I
really
know what you
know.
mean. A lot of people were doing their best, and I definitely can't fault. Like I've talked about this with my mom, and she has said, basically just moved there for job reasons and did her best, and that's why we were involved in that church because it was something, you know. And everyone's doing their best. Those people were also were your parents were probably my parents were like in their mid-20s when they had me. I don't know if yours were a little bit older or not, but
They were older, yeah.
but
It-
yeah, I mean, people were just doing their best, I think, the whole time. And I think you're right. Movies are totally, what do you want to say, divinatory. Like there's a lot of that's something that I'm very into now is like divining things through symbols and signs that appear to you and how those
mm. Mhm.
and movies absolutely carry big nuggets of truth. So, yeah, I remember even like with that same aunt I was just talking about, she would have us watch Practical Magic. You know that one with like Sandra Bullock? Um,
Yeah.
it was almost like a training tutorial, like, but we thought it was just like a fun movie to watch. You know what I mean? But there's real knowledge and wisdom in there somewhere. I
Yeah,
really,
she was actually like schooling you.
she was
She had
schooling
other
us. Oh no, for
options.
real. I mean, we would go out in nature. We would like deal with the energies of the plants. We did like, she did like a kind of famously in the town, did a tree hugging to revive a tree one time. She's a really cool lady,
Oh
but
my gosh.
I know true witches in these parts. But
Yeah,
um,
sometimes it's more simple than you think. Like sometimes like, you're not trying to like summon the, angel of blah blah blah. Sometimes like you're just trying to connect and heal with the earth and like give energy and like positive energy towards a tree that needs healing and like do the tree hugging like circle. Like sometimes the answer is more simple,
I
right?
agree. And even just like, and sometimes you do want to call the angel, um, but I do remember, I've also said before to you that it was such a important moment for me when I was going through my big spiritual awakening moment, which was in like whatever 2021, I think, or something like that. And one of the first people I called was you because at the time I was like, well, I mean, you've always been a good ear and given me good advice and wisdom, but for some reason I was like, I really need to just explain to you what's going on because I think you'll understand. And I think I was, why do I feel like I was in Nashville at that time or something, but I was calling you on the phone. And I just walked up and down some neighborhood I was staying in that day of the street, some street, and told you this whole story about like all these crazy things that were happening and how I was like, I think I'm supposed to like save the world. Like I think I'm supposed to be like I'm the chosen one. And you were like, all right, first of all, like like sit down. You're not the only chosen one. That was important for me to hear. And then second of all, you were like, go and put your feet on the ground and just feel that connection and breathe in and out, which I think is some kind of maybe a Kundalini based idea. But it helped me so much. Like I was floating around in the air at that time because I was also on like steroids and I was just like really just not grounded. And the first thing you were like, okay, all validated, time to ground. And that was like the thing I needed to hear because I do think when you're going through an awakening experience like that, it can turn into, I don't know if it's necessarily psychosis, but like it can go into a place that just isn't grounded too easily. And a lot of people fall into
Yes.
that trap when it's, especially when it's unprepared. And even one of the things you've said is with Kundalini, it's almost like in some ways it's kind of forcing that awakening too. So a lot of people can be unprepared. And I just found that to be super valuable advice. Probably you lived it and that's why you had it. But um
Oh, yes, 100%. I was a kite without a string, just like I was just, wandering and um yeah, no, I had to learn kind of myself how to navigate it. And yeah, I remember that phone call. I was in Charleston and you called me. I don't know where you were. I was
I must
just
have been in
visiting.
Nashville. For some reason I'm remembering that I was, but like I don't know
Yeah.
why I wouldn't have been visiting you if I was. So you must have not been there that day or something like that.
I was not there because I remember being in Charleston, South Carolina, and we were on the phone for a while when
Yeah,
that
like an
happened.
hour.
Yeah.
I get
And I
that.
just remember that conversation and being like, oh, you called the right person, like I know what this is that's going on, and I didn't want to, I remember being choosy with my words too, because, I understand when all that's happening, it's hard to hear in the moment that like you're having a chosen one moment right now, and like I understand that, and also there's a real big need to ground during those times because you sort of do end up wandering off into outer space and maybe even accessing things that I don't know if we all should be accessing, and just remembering that you belong on the earth, and to like, connecting to the planet, and to like like finding your anchor, is so key. Like, I know this, we didn't even really, but I guess this podcast is mostly touching on spirituality,
It can be
right?
whatever we want to talk about. I really want to hear about like your journey too. I'm not trying to take up this time with all my stories. I'm
No,
happy
it's
talking to you. It's
relevant.
been a while. Yeah.
It's 100% relevant. It's like, but yeah, I'm just, I guess, to anyone who would listen who might be going through that right now, right?
Yeah.
Or like ends up going through that, or maybe like, oh yeah, I know what, they're talking about right now, like just a nod. But I think it's so key to just remain very grounded during those times. Like, I remember this might everyone's obsessed with like the crystals and the pretty ones and everything. I'm like, during that time, find like a rock, like from like the river or whatever. Like, find like a
Yeah.
rock and like hold on to the rock in your hand and like meditate
I
with
did
like
that too. I think you told me to
like,
keep a rock in my pocket for a while, and I did. It was good
yeah.
advice.
It's like, and eat like root vegetables, like
Yes,
literally
yeah,
grounding things.
very
Ginger tea.
Aquarian Music Witch, the podcast, is made possible by listeners like you. To support this project, you can contribute directly through our Ko-fi page at ko-fi.com/Aquarian Music Witch, or consider subscribing to our Supercast page. With the AMW Supercast Content Access Pass, you'll gain access to a vault of exclusive content and other cosmic perks starting at just $5 a month. Now, back to the show.
It really works. It was really exactly the medicine I needed, you know? I wasn't too up in the sky, or like I did prepare. That's part of it. Like I know I think we talked about this too, that I did not ever experience like a Kundalini fire spine awakening. I did like the way that you do when you wake yourself up, kind of like over time. I think I really made that awakening happen. And so in some ways I was prepared because I got there, but in some ways it's very easy to float up, and I really needed that grounding advice at that time. Even me, with as perfect as I am at all times.
Yeah, no, I think that it's so, oh gosh, I have so much to say about it, but
Good.
no one can really handle it completely entirely on their own, I don't think. I think
Mhm.
sometimes and that's like part of the age that we're coming into. Like, it's like, to tie this together a little bit, it's like, you know, you're not alone. Like, a lot of people are waking up, and we need community, and we need like people who have an awareness around this to like, be available. Like, it's almost like you need a even know what to describe it as, just like a someone to hold your hand through that process a little bit.
Just
It's
community and connection. I totally agree. I think that's a really good point.
it's dramatic, and it's sometimes frightening to go through
Yeah.
alone. And I also, with the Kundalini yoga stuff, like, that was, and we can talk about that more, but that was my path at the time to get to like the experience that I had, which was like a very liquid, fiery, like, dramatic, explosive awakening process, pounding at the door of God, let me in, forced reaction, like a forced reaction to the, and I don't think that that path is safe for everybody. And I also highly encourage people to like explore the paths that like, work for them, rather than just hearing things about Kundalini yoga or Kundalini like breath work or whatever, and just like being like, that sounds like fun, and like that sounds like the way, like, like you've got to gel and vibe. For me, I read all the signs from the universe, and it was undeniable that that was my path.
And
But
I
I
think it
think,
was like externally validating that I think for you in particular, that was the way that you had to do what you had to do, and you did it, and it was amazing.
and I think for a lot of people it's not, and I think it can be a dangerous one, and that it's a very volatile, vulnerable one, and that it's just something to meditate on. It's just like I think people get very excitable when they hear about these kinds of, in the Eastern sense of the word, like technologies. Um, and it's like a buzzword now almost, right? Like Kundalini. But
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of came into fashion like after you got into it, certainly from my perspective, but that is interesting when it becomes like a trend almost, or like awakening becomes a trend, which to me is like obviously core. I think a lot of people woke up around the pandemic. I think that was a common experience, if anything. But at the same time, it then becomes like commercialized and now it's like a trend. And that's kind of a bizarre thing to watch happen, and even to watch it die a little bit when you're like, no, but I really, this wasn't a trend to me. Like this is my real life, you know? Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And God, the pandemic, like it was like the 420 vision, right? Like certain people were definitely like aware and waking up, and some people like have chosen their path and are just totally asleep,
Yeah.
and
Well, that's interesting too. And it's interesting to me. Sometimes I think people are on the same level, and then I realize all at once that they are not, even though they appear that way, like to this day. But I do feel like we're all kind of living on different levels of what's happening, which is strange.
yeah, to kind of go back to something I said earlier, people are so afraid of their end of the world kind of thing.
Yeah.
In a way, we kind of already had it,
Yeah.
like in a lot of ways. And in one, to touch on one of those ways, it's like I think we're all realizing now that a lot of our reality is based on perspective. And I know people, I'm not going to name names, doesn't matter, but people that I know who just watch the news all day long
Hmm.
and look at like Fox News, and just like watch that like all day, and just sit in their chair and watch, the horrific stuff that is real, that is happening. Like some, not all of it is, how it's painted to be on the telly, right? But it's there's some truth, right? And there's a lot of realness to things that are happening in the world right now. Absolutely. Undeniably so. Um, and it's always been happening forever, like wars and violence, and just like really scary things that are not okay. Like that's the raw, real nitty gritty of it, is that there's always been a darkness. But it's almost like now people are just very heavily distracted and have chosen to make that their reality, like, and that's the frequency. And for me, it's it's almost like it's stripping the life out of their own personal life, and being in the now moment for themselves, and finding their bliss, in an abrasive world. People do choose their realities, right? And to a degree, I know that it's such a complex and also tricky subject to navigate, right?
Yeah,
Kind
well,
of.
you say that, and then yeah, it's like as soon as you try to apply some context, there's exceptions and there's things to be careful about, and there's things not to hurt people by being insensitive about. And then at the same time, it's undeniable that in some sense we create our realities. And I like to talk about that as being like a collective kind of a sense, maybe, or like we kind of come together in a density to agree on something, and then that becomes a reality. So maybe that helps us evade some of these problems of being like, well, you're sick, it's your fault. You got attacked, it's your fault. Like that's not right, but it's
Right.
in some sense, I think it's undeniable.
Yeah, such a slippery thing to navigate. But yeah, I think that we're in such a cool time too, it's like we're in this crossroads too, with
Mhm.
things like AI.
Yeah,
And
fascinating.
oh my gosh, what do you have to, I'm curious what, so you'll never catch me creating like an AI version of myself on
Ah, ha,
Instagram.
ha, ha. You already got me doing it.
Did I catch you? I didn't know that you did that.
I was
Okay.
just saying, well, not yet, but I was just saying to my dad over Christmas, it's so funny. I forget what prompted it, some commercial or something, but I was like, I really, really want to be a cyborg. Like, I really want to become an AI
Oh,
version of myself so I can live forever and continue to think forever. Because what if I could always continue to think? Can you imagine what we would come up with? So much. I know not everybody feels that way, but like, yes, and I keep saying it into the ether too, into the digital world, because I'm like, somebody's going to be combing this information. Somebody's going to find my podcasts and my read books and my music. I'm recreatable, and this is intentional. So that's my take.
you know, I'm completely opposite.
That's okay.
I'm like, let's get rid of it. Like,
You
I'm
know.
like, I'm on the side where I'm like, you know what? This has gone too far.
Well, maybe you're in your last lifetime here. I was told by a psychic that I'm in my last reincarnation, and I was like, I don't think I'm ready to know that. I don't think I'm ready for that. I would like, if this is the last one, may it go on forever, because it's not that I'm scared of death. I actually embrace death probably more than almost anybody you could talk to. It's not even about that. I'm not afraid of death at all. It's that I love life. That's what it is. It's not that I want to avoid the death part. It's that I love the life part. And I can love things and put them down. So I'm okay with dying. But I love it so much that I could see myself doing it forever. Does that make sense?
So just, I like to look at what's natural,
Sure.
right? Like at nature, and like what happens is that like the thing dies, the flower dies, the the grass dies, eventually the tree will die, the squirrel dies, the owl dies, and for me, and it doesn't come back, and that's, it composts, or whatever, and I'm on that, sort of like, I like to look at what's natural, and I want to match that. I think what we're doing right now, this is my opinion, I think what we're doing with artificial intelligence is extremely dangerous and is like defying nature. It's almost in a way defiling it. It's turning it into something that's like really swimming upstream, and sort of is it's playing God too much for me. And for me it's not the what, it's the how. Dying, like, I'm on board with that.
We've both been on board for a while, I think. We're both kind of
Yeah,
surprised it hasn't happened yet. That's all.
we were hardcore. We come from the generation that cut ourselves,
Yeah, we were the cutter generation. I should put a warning on this episode, but we were the ones that had no fucks to give.
Trigger warning. No, no, we're not. This is the unfiltered truth,
It
right? Like,
is. It is.
we like came from the generation that, we were burning cigarettes into our own arms. We were
Yeah,
like,
that was weirdly popular. That was like a sign of a sexy particular guy that I'm thinking.
right? It's like that guy like listened
Ugh.
to a lot of Nirvana, you know what I mean? He freaking tattooed himself with the XC Nirvana, face with cigarettes at the time. Oh no, but yeah, I just yeah, with dying, it's not the what, it's the how. I would like a more organic death, that was pretty painless, like I think most people would. There's nothing special about that. And as far as like what's left behind, I would consider it, an accomplishment. Like, I mean, I don't know. In some ways, I could say I already feel accomplished, right? Like, I've created some art. I've helped a lot of, I was a
I
yoga
feel it's very
teacher, a sound
accomplished.
healer. I've like helped a lot of people. I also, have worked in behavioral therapy for a few years now, and I've helped a lot of clients out with different things that have
You're a healer, there's no doubt. And you've made a lot of art and music. You're very, very prolific. I think you've
yeah,
done
so
a lot.
why keep going? Why can't why keep going? I've already done the work. This is it. You know what? Mission accomplished. Came to Earth, did the thing. Like, but no, but like I feel like there's a lot of fear around death right now, right? And it's an important subject to touch on, is that we need to have a healthier relationship with it. I mean, our whole culture is based around avoiding it, right? It's just
that's a good point.
avoiding it.
Or
And
avoiding the discomfort around it.
yeah, it makes people very uncomfortable, which I love, but
Well,
just
you love to be in those dark places. I forget if we talked about your chart, but like, do you have a
oh
lot of
yes.
Scorpio in your chart? Because it feels like it sometimes.
Not to reveal too much, but it is my first house.
There you go. There you go. And I think we've talked about that's why your sense of humor is like it's almost like wicked, but it's very, very funny. If to be me who knows you for years and to listen to you go off about something is like very, very funny because I know you to be, I don't know, like the most genuine soul that there is and the most like shining light in this world. And then you'll just say something that's so off the cuff that just shouldn't almost be said. And it's basically the funniest thing in my universe.
Oh, but do not get me started about people that wear scrunchies or want to wear them. I mean, like, do not get me certain subjects like, junk kids. Do not get me started on junk kids.
I don't even know what that
Like,
is.
these are
Maybe
all
I should not.
concepts that, like, may be more unique to me, but when I go on my rants, like, people are not freaking ready for them.
People
I
get
mean,
wide-eyed and they're just like, what do we do next? Like, do we run? Like, what do we do?
and then right after I'm done with like my like angry ass rant, I'm just like, let me brew you some Tulsi tea to
Yeah.
like
Now let me
mellow
be
out.
the most grounded and down-to-earth person you've literally ever met.
Like literally. But that's the medicine of these times too, is putting a twist of humor into everything. And also you got to acknowledge the dark, but we can't just be like so concerned all the time. Oh, that's so awful and blah blah blah. Like we can't just like worry and be like anxious together. And like, I get it. Like I know, some some of my friends like to bleed all over the place over the things that are like giving them, and it's valid, like the anxieties and the fears and the anger and everything. It's like okay, like I get, like I understand, like,
Mhm.
but it's okay to feel like you're allowed to also have moments where you also feel good. You can't
Yeah.
just sit there and stew and feel bad all the time. It's like you've got to.
It's almost like
And I
self-hating
think,
too.
sorry.
It's almost like self-hating to sit there for that long and just not move on from it. So that is like a gift, I think, when you can get people to make light of something that they're so totally stuck in. Like it's important to feel, but it's also important to process.
Absolutely. Remember, I don't know why this is like jumping around the subject matter, but I had a client who went by she, her pronouns, and had another client who was, being an asshole to them one day, and then said, during a fight, said, "You want to go, bitch? Let's go." And then I heard like a chair slam against a
Oh
wall
my
or
God.
whatever and came running. But then when I ended up talking to the kid who said, "Bitch, let's go," I like was like in front of both of them. I was like, well, like when, the sauce settled down, I was like, well, at least you use the right pronouns.
At least you're gendering her correctly, yeah.
And they both loved it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was a huge trigger where like the pronouns for my one like a huge one. And it was like a moment where we could all like laugh and turn like the, hard nitty gritty, like raw situation into like, something like it's bringing medicine. It's like alchemizing. Like,
Yeah, it's
I
like
think that
alchemizing.
the humor is the medicine, right? And it's not for everybody. Like I have a Sagittarius moon and I have a tongue that's like a little forked tongue made of fire that just like spits out fire sometimes, and it's not always invited to the party, but when it shows up, it is just not for everybody, you know, and
It is
I
for
get
some though. You find the people that are meant for you though, and like I've always
that.
loved your friends whenever I've met them. You always surround yourself with the people that can deal with it. I think are some of the most interesting people.
That can deal with it. Yeah. I know, I agree. And yeah, thank you, because it's
Deal with it. I
something
don't
that
even mean it in a negative way. I find you like you're like a delightful little goblin. That's but but no, I it is. It's like I think you're right. It's like alchemizing. It's like medicine. It really is. Because
Yeah,
you can feel that like energetic shift happen. And I don't know. I like a lot of what you've done in your whole life is alchemizing too. I think you're clearly an alchemist because I don't even know how I can express that with words, but just like the places that we were and then the places that I've seen you go to and the things that I've seen you be is alchemy, you know?
I would, nod that right back your way. Like, same, same to you. Um, and I think it takes one to know one
Yeah.
kind of thing. Sometimes we wander through the world and people are just like, this person's like nuts, like, or like this person's tripping or whatever. Like, there's also a lot of people against us, and I don't know what kind of fucking evil ass, like nasty ass force or side they're working with.
Mhm.
Like, I know some of your stuff, and
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
just
I'm a
can.
controversial figure, Stephen. I am not beloved by all. I am beloved by some.
That's what I'm saying, is like sometimes like moths are attracted to a bright light, right?
Yeah, that's an interesting way to put it. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I always
And
thought of like, oh, go ahead.
oh no. Yeah, no, you go.
I always thought of like, there's always something in my head, and I know it's not like a universal rule for people, but it's more just like a mantra for me of like, if I wake up one day and I find that people are hating me, I have to be doing something right. And I know like people can hate you because you did a shitty thing, but like for me, it's like if nobody hates you, you're not really doing anything. If
Mm.
people like really passionately are trying to get you to stop, that must be spot on,
Who
Like
was it that
in a sense,
said,
like in a particular context. The way as I say that, I'm like, obviously there's exceptions. Don't violate people, but like if people are like that mad about your business, then that's interesting. That's probably a good sign.
yeah, you're kicking up the sand, huh?
That's what I think. Kicking up the muck in my favorite mason jar analogy.
I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but and this can be taken out of context sometimes. But yeah, like I don't know who said, I kind of forget, but it's like well-behaved women rarely make history.
Yeah.
Like, I think sometimes you have to go against the grain and I'm definitely a rule breaker, like in pretty much all situations in life. And when I started working in direct care and like now that I'm working in ABA therapy, I'm like definitely that rule breaker where I like, take action and beg for forgiveness later. I like to,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? I'm like, because I think that's like, we'll touch on this, right? Like, that's how intuitive people work. Like, we know in the now moment, like, what sometimes like we act upon like our initial, intuitive response to things and what we think it just we can't even help it almost. We need to, find that outlet for it by taking the action or saying the thing. And yeah, I think like, sometimes people are more calculated than that and or just have their opinions and want to do things the quote unquote right way or whatever, but we're very intuitive people and we take actions intuitively.
I know what you mean. And then it tends to, I mean, it doesn't always work out the way you expect, but it tends to guide you in the right direction no matter what when you get really good at exercising that muscle, I think. So I wish more people could work on that.
You know, I'm looking around like, God, girl, I was at the airport yesterday, right? I flew back to St. Pete yesterday where I live now, and I'm just like, I navigate the room and crowds and stuff based on like energy.
Yeah.
How the flow is. It's a dance. It's a big symphony, the
Yes.
rest of the room. And I just notice it's like one in every 100 people who are also like doing the dance with you,
Mm.
and trying to do it with everyone. But it's like almost at this point, and maybe it's always been like this, but it's almost like I'm just like having to, I'm like ready to tango, and everyone
Yeah.
else, sometimes it feels, this is me, like it feels like everybody else is just like, sloppy and like completely unaware and just
Yeah.
like la di da and like not even a shed, of awareness around their aura, around their behaviors. And for me, it's also like people like us and anyone like listening, it's hard. It's hard to be this way. Like just like knowing that it is fucking hard to be that person in the room who is navigating the world in this way. It's not easy work, and it can be isolating, it can be really lonely, but then that's where the humor also comes in.
That's
That's
true.
where you kind of can just like, make fun of it.
I think you're right completely. I've experienced that too, just like being in, I do it in the train stations a lot because that's like, it's like a giant echoing room where people are just walking around, getting to their various destinations. And I play this kind of game with myself where I'll like say I need to walk from one corner of the big room to the other or whatever. And I'll like play around with the energy. And it is like a dance, but I'll kind of like, look with my eyes and be like, okay, like I'll look at somebody and I'll be like, okay, I really want you to move out of my way. I really want you to go to the left, go on to the left, and then they'll go to the left. Or like, you know what I mean? Like I'll just kind of like direct, or even people walking at me as I'm walking at them, and I'll be like, you're the one that's going to move, not me. You know what I mean? Or like play with the way that the flow is. And some people are more aware of it than others, and some people have a little bit more control to where they can be like, no, no, you're moving or whatever. But like a lot of times it's kind of surprising how much you can kind of, I don't know if there's like especially if it's especially live in a big room like that, or if there's something about the acoustics that helps it, but it's so fun. Like it might sound like a fake game or something, like you're just imagining and projecting how people are going to act, or maybe sensing it based on their body language, and then you think it. But I want to say that there's something that you can kind of play around with the energy there. Do you do that?
I do that, but also like exactly that. But also when I had my Kundalini awakening
Mm.
for like 2 weeks after that, and I felt like I was levitating off the ground, like literally for 2 weeks, and like I thought that I was like fucking Moses. I was in New York City and I was parting people like the Red fucking Sea.
Yes.
Just walking, and I had my path and I was just like parting people in my mind, and then they would do it. And I don't know, like, I feel like a bigger expert on that could explain that in a way that like might, and I know that there are going to be people listening who are like, that's just lunatic. But like, if you've
I've got those
accessed
people.
that and if like know what I'm talking about, then like, cool, kudos to you because you know what's up. Like, there's a realness to that. I remember distinctly like having almost like mind control over people and their actions, like, and it was wild to experience it. And I was like, oh, I'm for sure Moses, like, like literally. But I was like, oh, I have powers. And it was
Oh,
like
you do.
really trippy and cool at the time. And yeah, and we all do, we have more than we even know, but at
Yeah.
the time I was so open, cracked open. And now I like don't play that way really as much. Like sometimes, like, I think that's like a frequency that's hard to maintain at all
It is.
times.
Some of the raw potency of that whole initial awakening kind of moment for me definitely faded. And I was also warned about that by a psychic, weirdly enough, who was like, yeah, this is going to go on for you for a little bit over a year. And then it's going to be like you still have those things that you have that have happened, and you can still kind of access them, but it's almost like it dulls down or something. Like there's like an initial explosion of just like raw power, and then eventually you're kind of just like in it more, and it's more like it's like the water stopped being boiling hot and got kind of lukewarm or something. Like, which is not all
100.
bad, because it's a lot for somebody to take constantly forever to have that kind of, access to those things. I don't know if it's healthy. I think you are on about that.
Yeah, we came to the planet to be human, right? And like part of like the human experience is, and also, like to be humble, but also like, maybe we're not meant to control anyone or like anyone outside of ourself, and just be in control of our own bodies. And is that actually even okay to like be doing things like that, even if you know that you can?